science topics.
Every second, at least 2 people die somewhere in the world. Everyone alive today will be dead within about 100 years. But mankind lives on through reproduction. Most of us expect to grow up, raise a family, and eventually die. But life may be less predictable for other species. Few of these plant seeds, for instance, are likely to grow into mature plants. And the stickleback, like many other animals, lays a large number of eggs, but few complete development to become adults. Yet of those that do reach maturity, some must reproduce if the species is to continue. The simplest form of reproduction occurs in the single-celled organisms, which divide into 2 identical individuals. This is a form of asexual reproduction called binary fission. Larger organisms, like Hydra, may produce offspring as buds, just outgrowths from the parent. The young Hydra soon drops off and becomes independent. This form of asexual reproduction, called budding, also occurs in plants. At the edges of the leaves, new plants are forming. They too will soon drop off the parent. All offspring produced by asexual reproduction are genetically identical to the single individual that produced them. In contrast, sexual reproduction often involves 2 individuals and always results in offspring which are similar but not identical to their parents. Let's see how flowering plants reproduce by sexual reproduction. The sex organs develop inside the flower. The male parts of the flower are the stamens. Inside the swollen ends of the stamens, pollen grains develop. Inside the pollen grains, the male gametes are formed. In the middle of this flower is the female part. At the tip is the stigma, and below the style leading to the ovary. Inside the ovary are rows of tiny ovules, each the size of a pinhead, and inside these ovules are the female gametes. Now, if sexual reproduction is to occur, pollen must first reach the stigma. That's called pollination. And then the male gamete must move right down to the ovules so that the male and female gametes can fuse. Let's see how this happens. The brightly coloured and scented flowers attract insects. The insects become dusted with pollen grains and carry the pollen from flower to flower. Some pollen may be brushed onto the female part of the flower. Here's a stigma, highly magnified. The surface is sticky and some pollen grains have become attached to it. Now, each pollen grain grows a tube down into the stigma tissue. In this photograph, you can see the tube that's grown out of the pollen grain and into the stigma. In this speeded-up film, we can see the pollen tubes growing. The tube grows down through the tissues of the style to the ovary. The male gamete moves down inside the pollen tube on its long journey to the ovary. Now, let's see how the ovules are fertilized. The pollen tube is attracted to one of the ovules by chemicals which are released through a hole in the ovule wall called a micropyle. And it's through this micropyle that the tube must grow. If we look inside the ovule, we can see how fertilization occurs. There's the female gamete. The end of the pollen tube dissolves, and the male gamete finally reaches and fuses with the female gamete. This fusion is what we mean by fertilization. Each fertilized ovule gradually becomes a seed, which may later develop into a new plant. Not all plants have attractively colored flowers. Grasses, for example, are not pollinated by insects, but by the wind. The stamens, laden with pollen, hang out into the air. The stigmas are large and feathery. Like a net, they capture pollen carried to them by the wind. Some plants do not produce pollen at all, so let's see how they reproduce. These small plants live only in damp places. These are male plants, and a little further on are some female plants. The sex organs develop under umbrella-like structures. The male produces not pollen, but motile male gametes, or sperms. The microscopic sperms have two long tails to help them move about. Under really wet conditions, the mature sperms are released and may be carried away in the water. If any sperms reach a mature female gamete, then fertilization may result. In the animal kingdom, sexual reproduction also involves the fusion of a motile sperm with a female gamete. Let's look again at Hydra. Under certain conditions, Hydra, instead of budding, may develop swellings under the tentacles, the testes. In the testes, motile sperms develop. When mature, they're released into the water. Near the base of the hydra, another swelling forms, the ovary, which will eventually contain a single gamete or egg cell. As male and female gametes mature at different times, the large egg cell is likely to be fertilized by sperm released into the water from another hydra. After fertilization, the egg cell will drop off and, when conditions are suitable, develop into a new individual. Like Hydra, most fish and amphibians also release their sperms into the water, but the newt encloses his sperms in a white sac and passes this sac into the water. The female positions herself so that the sperm sac is drawn into the opening at the base of the tail. Another male releases his sperm sac, there, in the circle. And the female positions herself to take up the sperm. The eggs will be fertilized inside the female's body. Sperms can only exist in a liquid, so animals that reproduce out of water must pass their sperms, suspended in a fluid, directly into the female's body. But before mating can take place, males and females must find each other. Some species have remarkable powers of attraction. This moth, for instance, can attract a mate over a distance of up to 10 kilometers. The male has sensitive antennae that can detect a particular scent produced by the female. Here's an experiment. In this dish is a newly hatched male. and here a newly hatched female. Let's see what happens when there's a breeze to carry the scent of the female to the male. A solitary whale can attract a mate over hundreds of square kilometers of ocean just by calling. Many birds, too, may call for a suitable mate. Some go to extraordinary lengths to attract females and also to outmatch other rival males. And, consciously or not, we too may attract a mate using a complex mixture of sounds, smells and visual signals that are all part of courtship. Courtship may develop a special bond between male and female and lead to mating. The act of copulation may demand considerable cooperation between the partners if the male is to pass his sperms successfully right inside the female's body. Let's see how fertilization occurs in man. Sperms are produced in the testes. These cells are developing into sperm cells. When they're mature, sperms have relatively long tails, yet their total length is only 1/20th of a millimetre. The mature sperms collect in part of the testes. During intercourse, they're squeezed along a tube into the penis, which is now greatly enlarged. The sperms are mixed with other fluids from different glands. These fluids help to nourish and transport the 500 million or so sperms which are ejaculated into the vagina of the female. Many of these sperms will move up into the uterus, and some of these will reach the fallopian tube. The female reproductive organs are protected by the pelvis. The egg cells are produced in the ovaries, and once a month an egg is released from one of the ovaries and slowly passes down the fallopian tube. If the egg meets sperms here, fertilization will occur. This is the surface of a living ovary. The circle of cells is called a follicle. The large cell in the middle of the follicle is the egg cell or ovum. When the egg cell is fully formed, the surface of the follicle bursts, and the whole contents of the follicle, including the egg, are released. This is ovulation. The jelly-like bundle containing the egg cell is now wafted into the funnel leading to the fallopian tube. The funnel is covered in tiny hairs, or cilia. The beating cilia help to convey the egg down the fallopian tube. Looking at the fallopian tube from the outside, we can see that muscular contractions also help to move the egg down inside the tube. Inside the fallopian tube, the small cells surrounding the egg have fallen away. At the same time, sperms are swimming towards the egg. As the sperms surround the egg, a single sperm will penetrate the egg wall to achieve fertilization. The fertilized egg divides into two cells. Each cell divides again. The dividing egg continues its journey down towards the uterus. The ball of cells reaches the uterus about 6 days after ovulation. Here it will embed in the uterine wall and gradually develop into a baby. Unlike humans, some species can only reproduce once in their lifetime. Others, like deer, mate once a year. And hares, for example, breed more frequently. Outside these breeding seasons, courtship and mating do not occur, since the sex organs are not active. The male stickleback, for instance, is only attracted to a female when she is fat with eggs, and the female only responds to a male in full breeding colours. However many breeding seasons there are, other factors control the number of offspring that can be raised. The snowy owl, for example, cannot usually find enough food to rear all her chicks. The less food there is to be found, the fewer will survive. Animals also need room to breed. If there are too many gannets, for instance, some will not find room to nest, and reproduction will be prevented altogether. A pair of robins, like other songbirds, may raise about 10 young in a season, but on average, 1 adult and 9 of the chicks will die before the next season, either from starvation or disease, or they may be killed by predators, such as birds of prey, or the domestic cat. We, on the other hand, do not have these controls. We have no predators. Fewer youngsters die from disease, and in most countries we produce sufficient food to prevent widespread starvation. So, to keep our population stable, each couple on average need only raise 2 or 3 children. However, mothers can now produce children over a period of more than 30 years. And with no special breeding season, conception may occur in any month of the year. So, without any natural controls over reproduction, couples not wishing to produce a baby may decide either to avoid intercourse or else use contraceptives. Most contraceptives act as barriers that prevent sperms reaching the egg. The pill, a contraceptive taken by mouth, prevents ovulation altogether, so there's no egg to fertilize. We are the only species which can choose when to start a family and how large that family should be. In an already crowded world, this is one of the most important choices in our lives.